Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Healthy Hustle Podcast, where business owners learn to thrive as we strive. On this show, we sit down with industry-leading experts about developing self-awareness, impacting your niche, and striving to live the best life possible. Our mission is to encourage ambitious pursuits in a heart-healthy way through intentional conversation and increasing self-awareness. Why heart healthy? Because burnout and stress are global epidemics. We're discussing tools that help you to navigate business ownership successfully. So whether you're driving to or from work right now, exercising, eating, or simply relaxing, come hang out and get ready to enjoy another inspiring episode of the Heart Healthy Hustle Show. What's going on, guys and girls? What's going on, guys? Happy Wednesday, September 19th, 2018. Yes, September 19th. I know, insane, right? Hey, I wanted to give you guys a heads up. This episode is another solo episode. I actually recorded this in early to mid-June when this episode was originally recorded. It is all about the launch of, or the delay of the launch of this podcast, the journey up to it, the mental battles I was going through. And really, I focus mainly in this episode on why I deciphered post-launch that the delaying and procrastination up until the launch was largely due in part to ego and self-preservation. I think self-preservation is perhaps the most innate need of humans, and I am a human, and I have no shame in sharing that I think my ego was at play in delaying the launch of the Heart Healthy Hustle podcast. The main point, I'll save you some time if you don't want to listen to another solo episode, no hard feelings. I'll give you a brief synopsis. The main point of it is simply this. If you're putting off something that you truly believe is your life purpose or something you believe, hey, I will be successful once I do that thing, then if that's really what you believe, I challenge you to start that ASAP. I think a reason I was putting off this podcast launch as long as I did, the weeks up until the launch was I was already in launch mode. I was putting in a ton of work. So even before the launch prep, I will say, largely it was due to thinking that once I start that podcast, my life's going to change. And it's going to change for the better, and it's going to change fast, and it's going to change very much. And, you know, that's scary. It's interesting how you can self-sabotage and how you can tell yourself lies, just let time go by when, in fact, that time is going to pass anyway. So why not start that thing? 5 years from now, it will still be 5 years from now. Hey, I'll be honest with you guys. I was thinking today, I don't ask for anything in return for this show. I've got a lot of people telling me it's impacting their life. They really got a lot out of this episode or that episode. I haven't monetized the show, and my main ask is, for now, simply, if you do enjoy the show, if you are a frequent listener, I need your help to spread the word about the show. It can be anybody. I had some people who are close to me who recently traveled to Italy, and when they were there, they told their waitress about the show. And in fact, the waitress, there's downloads showing on the world map from that exact city in Italy. So I think there's no such thing as a coincidence, and I think that's what happened. So one person, maybe you just met somebody at the gym, maybe you just did a workout class, maybe you are really good friends with somebody you think, hey, this could really help them out in their life. This episode in particular is something that they've been dealing with and have been looking for more insight into. That guest really had a lot to say about that. So if you would, I want to ask you to do that by the end of either today or the day that you listen to this podcast. Currently just wrapped up a premium milkshake from Cookout. So no shame. Sometimes you got to treat yourself. I also had a wonderful gym session tonight, wrapped it up really nice with the sauna session. Sauna is amazing for just detoxing, stress relief, and overall just keeping cool. No pun intended, if that's even a pun. Just in life, and it's a great thing to do. So without further ado, I'll usher you into this pre-recorded episode from back in June 2018. Hey everyone, it's Jonathan Frederick doing an episode for why I believe procrastination is actually ego. So let me put it to you like this. I've been procrastinating this podcast for over a year. The point of making this episode is it hit me today. I officially got accepted and approved by iTunes. And as great and awesome as that was, it's really not that big of a deal. But it's a stepping stone and milestone in the sense that I submitted it. I put my first episode published. It hit me throughout the day. I'm a hardworking individual. I realized that maybe I've been putting off the podcast. There's other reasons, but the reason I would have been more or less okay with putting off the podcast or whatever business venture you're thinking about pursuing or idea that you have, maybe you're going to start a business. The reason I was putting this off was because in my head, I know it can be successful. I know it will be, as long as I'm consistent and providing valuable content in the long run and using SEO and marketing it correctly and actually serving my listeners, you guys who are listening right now. So I think I was calm and confident about putting it off for as long as I did and letting myself off the hook because of the fact that I felt, okay, well, I'll be successful one day when I start that podcast or when I open that business or whatever it is. But then you start it from day one, the real start of it, and you realize how hard and how much work is ahead of you, and it's just a really overwhelming sense of if you're not careful, it can cause you to doubt yourself. I'm not gonna say that that's what I'm dealing with. It's just an overwhelming realization that this isn't a good idea unless I actually execute every single day and do what it takes. And I'm ready to do that, and I'm going to do that. It's just like when you realize after you actually start for real, put yourself out there for real. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Like, let's say you're going to do a marathon and you actually take that first stride in the race and you just realize like, wow, I have to run this many more miles before I finish this race. Wow, that is so much work. But a good analogy and my encouraging attitude tells me this. I know that it's all about the small steps and appreciating the small things along the way and failing faster and step after step. So that is the mentality you have to have, is just keep taking one more step, and have your goal, have your specific vision. But I can't focus on that every day, or why would you just be overwhelmed? You'd be inundated with, wow, how would I ever, this is going to be so difficult, blah, 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 blah. And your brain's just going to start exploding and you'll realize you always have fear to overcome. And I will act on faith, not fear. So I'm going to keep this podcast going. I'm going to put my all into it. It is amazing, though, once you actually start that thing that you know is a great idea and is needed, and you're going to serve people. It's this awesome, and it's like, yes, it's invigorating and exciting, the beginning highs of it, but then also you realize that you don't just start and you're good. For the fact that I can't expect anybody to care about this podcast, not even my own personal, not even my family, not even my friends. It's not their life. It's my dream. It's my goal. And I'm confident I will bring more people along for the journey as I continue pressing forward. And that being said, I'm not naive in the sense that, from day one especially, the reality is ambiguity, which is like people aren't sure about it. It's the unknown, is always met initially with negativity. That's something I realized in working in sales but people's guards drop when they see that you exude love. I remember when I first discovered Christian Guzman on YouTube, and I remember when I wasn't like watching every episode. I think I had just found him I was in college at the time. I was watching a YouTube video about how to do a certain exercise, and I vaguely remember it, kind of feeling like, wow, this kid is such a dork. Look at this, the name of his brand, Alpha Elite, like, oh duh, like combining alpha and athlete. And I just looked at as I was mean. And I was thinking, I didn't comment anything or leave any negative comments or anything like that. I wanted him to do well. But I remember judging him and thinking to myself, just because I didn't like the name of the brand, thinking how corny it was to myself at the time, not really realizing that it doesn't matter if I like it or not. He's going to end up he's going to keep going, which I'm glad he did. Of course, I want him to succeed very much so, as he already has. But my point is, when you first start, you can't expect people to support you. The cool part about this journey is if you think long term, you're going to be okay with that, because you realize that you'll end up winning over a lot of people harder later on. So my point with that is, I now admire Christian Guzman. He's we share a lot of similarities. I think that's why he's so relatable with his audience. A lot of people grew up similar ways as he did. And he made his life happen, and he took action, and he's an entrepreneur to the core. Entrepreneur to the core. And he's a cool guy too. You know, he surrounded himself with winners, and it's obvious that people really like him. I remember seeing a YouTube video from him like 4 years ago and just thinking to myself, oh, this kid is so corny. I think at the time he had plenty of views, like thousands and thousands. Even he may have already been exploding, I forget. But my point with that is, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what his clothing brand stood for. I just saw the name of the brand and I was like, oh, please. Literally, I kind of remember having that attitude. I was far more judgmental back then than I am now. It's amazing, though, that now my admiration for that individual is so high. I'm totally rambling, I know, but my point with all of this is just keep at it, step after step after step. That's all it's going to take. If you're just thinking every day to yourself, here's what I want, here's my goals, here's what I would, like, your goals should scare you, and I'm starting to realize, like, what that means. I'm starting to really realize what that means. Like, I'm not horrified, I'm not afraid. It's just like my goal of, I'm scared now because of what if I don't succeed? And I guess the point of procrastination equals ego is this. When you actually stop procrastinating and take action, the buck stops there. So I'm trying to think of a better catchphrase, but there's no more like, oh, well, when I start that, I'll be successful. It's no, you have started it, and is it going to work or not? So yeah, I may be confident it's going to work. However, will it? And so it's a different feeling. I've never actually felt quite this intensely about pursuit before in this way. It's different and it's uncomfortable, but I'm embracing it because I know I have to be malleable and just keep pressing on one step after the other. I know I'm needed. I know my voice is needed, and I'm confident that this podcast will serve a lot of individuals, help people, encourage people, lead people, and ultimately love people and just do great things. I really believe that. I honestly have no doubt about that. And me just saying that right now and anticipating you as the listeners hearing this later is really inspiring to me. So I hope that you can relate. If you're procrastinating but letting yourself off the hook to where you have no anxiety over it, or that's good, don't have anxiety. But if you have been procrastinating on a project that you are confident will make you successful, as hard as it is, I want to challenge you to go ahead and start. Just actually start and launch. Whatever it is, actually get it to full operating function, launch it. If it's a podcast, get your first 5 episodes recorded, edited, uploaded, pay for a Libsyn subscription, have them scheduled, submit it to iTunes for approval. Tag your MP3, all of that. Get your logo, resize it, whatever. Sit back. Well, don't sit back, but actually hit the publish button and then see how you feel. See if your confidence changes. I'm not trying to sound negative either. It's just this weird reality of procrastination is ego, in the sense that you can rest on phantom laurels. So laurels is like your winnings, your achievements, your victories, like all the spoils, right? Your laurels. So you'll hear people who are successful. Like, why do you... I look at these very successful people. I remember looking at Athlete X on YouTube, okay? This guy, athlete, Jeff Cavaliere, a physical therapist. I really admired him back when he first started his channel. He was getting 10,000 views, but I found him and I was glad I did, because I said, man, this guy's a real physical therapist. This guy's really providing a lot of help for people and good advice. And I cross-checked it with my physical therapy, or with my classes, what I was learning, and my doctors and everything, and it was good stuff. So now I stopped following him because I had all the advice I needed through college, right? And after a couple years, I went back, kind of stumbled into his videos again, and he's got millions of views on videos, 900,000 views on videos, video after video after video after video after video after video after video. This guy doesn't stop. He did it right. He made sure he had the SEO. He made sure the videos were up. He made sure that he was consistent. He made sure his content was the best. He made sure he was really helping, and time did its thing. Now he's a mega superstar on YouTube, more or less, just providing those videos that he does. Now, I went on a tangent there with Jeff Cavaliere. My point in bringing him up was the fact that I was on Instagram the other day after reanalyzing some of his videos and realizing how good he was at everything he did with that YouTube channel, and still does to this day. I see an Instagram ad for Athlete X, which is Jeff Cavaliere's brand. My first thought is cool, that I wasn't sure if I was following him and I saw this, or, there it says sponsored. It's as a paid promotion. It's an Instagram ad. Well, I thought to myself, like, why is Athlete X and Jeff doing this when they're already mega successful? I mean, he's training, I think he's a celebrity trainer at this point, but he's doing a lot of things. He's not hurting for money, I'm assuming. Okay, unless he owes like a bunch of loan sharks. I don't know what, but it would shock me to find out he was hurting for money. Let's put it that way. It would shock me to find out that he doesn't feel that he has contributed immensely to the health and fitness community and in the world just from his YouTube videos alone. Let alone he's a physical therapist. But that is what it takes. That is what it takes. These people who are that successful over time, they're constantly taking that next step. They're constantly looking for how to innovate, how to adapt, how to adjust to, like I interviewed Ian Garlic. He's a marketer, and he shared about you have to be able to adapt, and you have to always have he didn't use the word flexible, I don't think. I think he used, you have to have a good strategy. One strategy is you have to be consistent in order for this thing to keep flying, right? For an airplane, for example, to get to where it's going, to get to its destination as quickly as possible, it's got its engines on the entire flight. They never turn off, not even when they land. And so it's a constant push. There's more to an idea than it working out. It becomes a lot more real when you actually take responsibility for it, around it, and you pick it up, you put it on your back, you carry it, and you realize this is epic and incredible, and it's also a huge burden. And I can do it, but it's going to take one step after the other. If I had to run, for example, a Spartan Super, which is 8 to 10 miles and 30 obstacles, and I had to run that carrying a weighted backpack, a 50-pound, 100-pound weighted backpack, and I kept thinking the entire race, oh my gosh, I have to run 9 more miles. I have to run 8.5 more miles. I have to run 8 more miles. I have to run 7.5 more miles. If I thought that way until the finish line, I would suffer the entire race if I would even finish. The mental drain that would give me would be incredibly intense, and I wouldn't get there. I'd have the vision of crossing the finish line and the euphoria that would bring, but you can't focus on the end destination. It's about the journey, about who you become along the way. And I know that, and I understand that, the importance of taking one step after the other. And that is what it's all about. So as I grow this community, as I grow this podcast, I hope that whoever's listening gets something from this. And I'm sure there's people out there who can definitely relate. I know I'm just kind of going off the cuff on this episode, and let me know in the comments if you guys like this type of episode, this style. If you want to hear more like this, I'll be happy to do them. Just want to be real with you guys and share how I'm feeling. To bring actual value, I have to be real and open, and I can't hide things. That's why I'll be honest. I was even kind of embarrassed to bring up the name of Christian in the beginning of this episode, Christian Guzman, because I was like, oh, well, Christian is such a stud now. He's borderline extremely famous, and he is killing it, and he's a great guy. So I thought to myself, well, I don't want to share his name because what idiot wouldn't like him? You know what I mean? And I didn't want to sound like a hater because I've never been a hater or leave negative comments like that. But I got to be real. I have to be honest and authentic and give you guys real life examples of what's going on. So I'm stoked for the podcast. I've got episodes lined up. So for example, I got my whiteboard right here on the wall. I'm trying to be on top of things, so I have this whiteboard. I don't really capitalize on using it, but I do have a bunch of quotes written on it. I got some goals written on it. One quote and one of my favorites on here is start with the end in mind. You have to have a compelling vision. Other quotes, I'll just read them to you guys off my whiteboard here. Knowing makes the difference. And I got those first couple ones from John Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. If you want to check that out, you guys can find that book on Amazon, I'm sure, or Audible. Yeah, I've got stuff going. You know, it's scary, but I'm just going to keep pressing forward, one interview after the other. Let me know what you guys want to hear, who you want to hear from. This is a really fun journey. Let me know. Shoot me an email at info@thehearthealthyhustle.com with anyone who you know, who you believe would be a good guest and why. What is needed, I believe, is to inspire people who are getting after it, who have started a business. They own a business. Maybe they've failed many times. To be quite frank, you don't need to hear another interview from these famous guys. There's a circuit of about 20 to 50 people who Lewis Howes has already interviewed. A bunch of podcasts have already interviewed them. They got their own content. So you really don't, as exciting as that would be, it would be redundant at this point, to be real. It would be redundant. It would be cool. I would stroke my own ego like, oh, cool, I got these guys on the podcast. Fantastic. But at the end of the day, this is about really connecting with each other. And, you know, I'm going to bring you guys quality guests for sure. The interviews are going to be epic. Now, I have been pleasantly surprised with how helpful people are. So that being said, yeah, I'll go ahead and read you some more of the quotes on here. We have, I will act on faith, not fear. Current audiobook of the week I'm listening to is Confidence Gap. To be honest, I forgot that I have that on my phone, so I'm going to keep listening to that. Start with the end in mind, compelling vision. This could be my last day. Go, period. You know, I'm not promised tomorrow. Anything could happen, you know, so I have to be keeping that in my realizations throughout the day, not out of depression, but out of motivation. Remain willing to make difficult decisions. 80% of my private time should be study. All these social platforms, YouTube, even podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, they're all still very new, very young. If you're listening to this podcast and you can remember when there was dial-up, yeah, it's still very new. I love this one. Keep it super simple. Systematize things, you know, keep it super simple. Don't make it more difficult than it has to be. Quality is not always the go-to. You want to make sure it's done. Done is always 100 billion% more important than perfect. Done is better than perfect. I like this one. Stay starving, stay hungry. Certainty is a complete illusion. No more excuses. That one got me off my butt. And there's one other one on there. It's like a deep intrinsic value one to me that my sister actually shared with me. So I'm going to engage you guys as my listeners and just share this with you. I remember talking to her, and she just shared some encouraging words to me because I've built up a lot of walls that I kind of hide behind in the world and how I show up, especially in the arena of like the workplace. I come off as a bit harsh at times because I feel like it's the dog-eat-dog world. That being said, I understand that I have to move above that and past that. And she shared with me that, you know, before our call was over, she just reminded me and told me that like I've always been a really great brother to her, like always really loving. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, look at me at all, right? I'm not. Trust me. I'm the last person to do that. I'm sharing it just to be real. The last thing I wrote on there was people need. And my point in sharing that is like, she was like, you know, you've always loved me really well. And she's like, people need you, John. So, you know, I was like, man. And of course, it was really motivating as well to hear that from my little sister, who I love so much. It was like, it's really nice to hear that. Also, at this point in time, like 90% of what I want to do with this podcast is just connect people to each other, and let them know that what you're doing is important. You're important. You matter. Keep pushing forward and keep going. Keep reaching out to other people. Keep collaborating. Keep networking. And the journey will change you and mold you. And I'm on it now. And it's scary. I haven't made it at all yet. And I'm not going to sit here and rent a car and pretend I did. I'm just be real with you guys. It's okay to be real. It's okay if you drive an old car because you're hustling and you're better off and you enjoy not having a car payment. Don't be ashamed of that. Be proud of that. What else? It shocks me how fast and how far forward we can move in our lives and serving other people and humanity when we let go of our own ego, let go of ourselves, to where we just say, you know what? It doesn't matter how people react to me, how they respond. I'm here to do this mission, and I'm going to do it with confidence because I'm not going to dabble. I'm not going to dip my toe in and be like, oh, is this okay? Poke, poke, poke. No, you're going to kick the door in and you're going to do it. And, there's going to be splinters that stick some people along the way, and that's not your fault. You have to be dedicated to your purpose and your vision. You have to be dedicated. And I'm not saying to blow people off. I hope you don't misinterpret what I'm saying. This is almost like a voice journal for me at this point in time. I'm not sure if I'm ever or when I'll share this episode. It just got pretty real when I was reading that board. If you're listening, then something that I've shared has related to you or has resonated with you to a point where you feel welcome and more or less understood. And so I really appreciate that we share that bond. And I say to you, hey, keep going. You're doing great. You're doing great. Just be consistent. Don't be too hard on yourself. And when things don't go perfectly, smile, because it doesn't go perfectly for anyone. A crazy madhouse guy like Grant Cardone, I was listening to part of his interview with Lewis Howes earlier, and he just said, he was like, you guys only see what I do when I'm awake. Because people were hating on him and saying, well, how do you have time to spend with your family? It's dude, he even said, I sleep more than most people. Grant Cardone, yeah, he said it. And it reminds me what you see on social media is real that he did, maybe he did it, but it doesn't mean that he's going to also post the 10 hours that he slept. He's not going to put up a YouTube video of him in his bed for 10 hours. So he's a human too. Even a nutso entrepreneur like him. I want you as the listeners to understand that and feel okay with that and just have a peace about that because, at the end of the day, we're all going to our destinations, but we can help each other and pull each other along the way. I sense as a society that if from nothing more than just being so sick of the negative consequences of isolation and the me-centric trends that we see in society with Instagram and selfies and this and that, I do sense that the tides are changing. I think the pendulum's coming back. There's a book called Pendulum, talks about that. But a shout out to Alex Sharfin is the guy who I first heard that about that book from. The pendulum of a me-centric society back to a a community. I want to be on the top edge of that curve. I want to be on the trend. I want to be a rocket booster that is pulling thousands and hundreds of thousands of people towards the we are together trend of, I know how much faster we can all get to where our goals are when we help each other and not just think about ourselves. And it's not satisfying to just focus on yourself, is it? It's really not. So see how good it feels to help somebody out. Just do one random act of kindness tomorrow and see what it does to change your life and your perspective about things. And also just be grateful for how much is going right. Did you eat today? Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have transportation? For anyone listening to this podcast who's in a tough spot right now, think of those things and compare that to, okay, I could be literally living in a gutter or whatever else. It could be a lot worse. So find all of the stuff that you're grateful for, write it all down, go through it and focus on it, and you'll build momentum from that. You really will. And I encourage you to do that if you're feeling a little negative or, you're just going through a quick failure right now, you need something to get back up, just do that and see if it helps you. I'm confident it will. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thanks so much for listening. I do appreciate it sincerely when you guys leave reviews. They are helpful and they help more people find this podcast who may need it. So I want to ask you now if this podcast or anything I've ever said or anything any of my guests have ever said or recommended or shared has changed your life in any way or helped you in any way, to go ahead on to iTunes, go to podcast and search for Heart Healthy Hustle, and then leave us a helpful review. To be honest, it really does help so much and it means so much to me. So thank you guys for doing that. And I'll see you in the next episode. And before I go, I just want to recap. Like, I shared a lot of vulnerable stuff about myself. And, today wasn't the best day for me. It's 9:13 p.m. right now, recording this. Remember all the stuff that we just spoke about, and I hope that it encourages somebody out there and to realize that, you know what, I'm not alone at all. This is everybody. Everybody deals with insecurity. Everyone deals with the same stuff at some level, and we can all come around and connect with each other and understand each other better in this community of young professionals. So that's it for me, guys. I'll see you in the next episode.